a few times before. Andy Benfield, I like to call you when I talk to you about you to my friends. I say he's an international man of mystery who's traveled the world and has been on amazing adventures, written books about it, and so on. So I think that's a good introduction. But we're not going to talk about that part of your life right now, and I'll put a link in the show notes for the listeners that want to take a look at that part of your life. We talked about that at length before. But now it's about something else that we're both interested in, and that is meditation. So you teach meditation, obviously. You've been doing this a while. Before we get into the nitty gritty of it all, I mean, what got you started interested in meditation?
Yeah, it wasn't kind of a natural love of woo woo or spiritual stuff. It's actually similar to Tai Chi, which we both practice. That it has this reputation of being this kind of esoteric thing that kind of hippies are into, and meditation also missold like Tai Chi, I think. For me, it was basically, without doing my whole life story, had tried most other ways of kind of being happy, getting lots of stuff or lots of status or, several other of the S's, and none of them quite kind of hit the mark. And then one day I was reading a book about Buddhist philosophy, and it was talking about how as humans we tend to always want stuff and then get it and then want more stuff. And it was like, okay, that rings a bell, and never be satisfied. Something that modern psychology now recognizes and calls hedonic adaptation, that becomes the new normal. You get the car and then you want the boat and then you want the helicopter, and it kind of never ends. And coupled with that, a kind of realization that I had a tendency to kind of worry, negative thinking, which was something that this book also recognized as a kind of standard human tendency, this kind of negativity bias. And again, later kind of reading about it, found out that evolutionary biology now recognizes this, that we've kind of inherited the worrying genes because the ancestors that worried were the ones that kind of saw the tiger coming, so they went on to manage to reproduce, whereas the relaxed ones, didn't. And then this book was kind of saying, well, to address these, the thing really is meditation. So I thought, okay, that sounds interesting. I've got nothing to lose. Let's give it a try. And I was living in Asia at the time, so it was something that was kind of available. So yeah, I started training some different traditions. Some I liked more than others, and eventually went on to do a kind of secular mindfulness, they call it, a 2-year teacher training with the University of California. And then started teaching what I call meditation for the rest of us. So kind of very much practical, no woo-woo meditation.
Well, and that I think is a good place to start, because I mean we have to define our terms. Otherwise, like you said, people have this idea, just like we've been practicing Tai Chi. I mean, I started in '97, and it's been the main art that I've practiced for since then, and it is still surrounded by this mystical mumbo jumbo, and as you know, our late head instructor was very much against that and was extremely practical in his approach and no nonsense. Despite being steeped in the culture, language, spoke fluently both Mandarin and Cantonese, learned it in Asia and so on, emphasized the very down-to-earth, practical aspect of it. And there is also a little bit of meditation within our art in the Neigong exercises, as you know. So it's this practical aspect that always is where I end up, being interested. And because it's so intertwined with this New Age philosophy, hippie philosophy, and nowadays, it just comes in different iterations and different manifestations, that people attach a bunch of things onto it that aren't necessarily bad per se, only that's not necessarily what it is, or what it primarily has as function. So can we just define what meditation is for our, the way we see it?
The most concise I've managed to date is 3 words, which is be here now, which would be the aim of it, right? So be here now, getting your mind to a kind of state where you're not tied up reliving the past or planning the future. You're not lost in thought. You're focused on the present moment. And there's a number of great advantages and benefits from doing that. But the basic thing, exercises you do to keep yourself focused in the present moment.
All right, and something else that one of my late teachers, Bob Orlando, said is that when we talk about things, when we define our terms, we also have to add what we're not talking about, what it is not, because there's this meme that you've probably seen, floating around. What you start wide, what you say, what you think, what you say, what somebody hears, what they think you said, what they interpret, what they reply back to you, and there's always more and more loss in the information getting squeezed out, basically, due to all these filters. So what, we kind of touched on it just now, but what is it not?
So I was put off from trying it for ages, actually, because I kind of read that book and thought, well, that sounds great if it's a solution to these things of negativity and never being satisfied. But I thought, oh, this means you've got to be a super calm Zen person and sit in silence for hours, cross-legged on a mat, and become somehow kind of like a spiritual person. So none of those things, I discovered, are thankfully true, although some people will have you believe, that they are and market what they're teaching in that way. I mean, you get calm by meditating, like you get fit by going to the gym. Result, not prerequisite. The more crazy the mind is now, the more you have to gain. Many different ways to do it. Okay, you can sit cross-legged on a mat for hours, days. I have, but thankfully, there's other exercises, things you can do with movement, with breathing techniques, things you can do while you're driving or walking or brushing your teeth. So lots of different ways to do it. And then there's nothing inherently religious or spiritual about it. There are no gods or faith required. And then people say, oh yeah, but meditation's in Buddhism, right? It's in Hinduism, it's in Taoism, it's in Christianity, it's in Islam. Absolutely, it is. But so is music in all of those, or most of those, or singing or chanting. Well, that doesn't make all music and singing religious. So, meditation is used by many kind of faith-based traditions as a way of kind of focus and calming the mind, focusing on the faith, but there's nothing inherently religious or spiritual about it. Practical exercises to calm the mind, you try them and you see if they work for you, if not, maybe try another variety. But yeah, no faith or gods required. I think the other thing that put me off was the idea that, okay, you do it and you'll get calm, but then you become some kind of emotional zombie. You'll be like super Zen and you just accept everything. So no, what it does is open up a bit of space between you and your thoughts. So instead of reacting to everything you think, you open up a bit of space there and say, well, maybe this is true and maybe this is not. A great example in self-defense would be that impulse to insult someone or punch them in the face, opening up a bit of space there to go, is this, long term a good idea and in my best interest? So it's more about becoming more in control of what you do based on your thoughts and what you accept. So don't believe everything you think. You're depending on whether you're hungry, you've had a good sleep, you're hungover, you can have very different perspectives on the world and what's the right thing to do. So for me, it actually gives you kind of more autonomy. And I think so much of leading a decent life is actually emotional regulation. The older you get, you realize, okay, that short-term gain of satisfying my immediate whims, actually I'll be happier if I put that off and go for the long-term thing. I'll be much happier. And so it gives you that kind of that freedom to choose. Yeah.
Yeah. What I would add is that every time that somebody adds on to meditation, that some sort of miracle cure or solution for whatever the issue is, like you mentioned, having this mindset of seeking status and then on more, but also people like, yeah, this cured my insomnia, this is going to cure this and that, it's going to solve that problem for me, get me out of my depression. That all may very well be true, and that may be true in specific cases where for somebody, for a variety of reasons, meditation was the thing that actually did help them get to whatever point they wanted to get and solve a certain problem or issue. That said, to then extrapolate that this is going to work for everybody who has that condition or issue, that is simply a lie. There's nothing real about that, and this is typical then the salesmanship that comes along with it, and then the marketing that certain teachers use to just like, oh, here's the proof because scientific study says that this helps with addictive personality. Right, and then you read the study, and then it says, well, actually, we tried this with 10 people, and 5 of them, or 6 or 7 of them, had a positive 10% increase in happiness, and whatever, name it. So you can't really extrapolate just individual cases like that, and that's what I always find off-putting with anything that is even close to the woo-woo stuff, and meditation for sure is one, is when you get these outrageous claims that have this morsel of truth in them, but are then just blown up way out of proportion. And then people who are looking for solutions, who definitely need help, are then drawn in and then often get very disillusioned at the end of it because, well, that wasn't as advertised. I didn't achieve that goal that you dangled in front of my nose, and now I'm out of a lot of money and maybe worse off to begin with. So that's where I tend to draw the line is that if it's that kind of stuff, when you see that, is no, just be honest about it. Like, there's plenty of studies saying that Tai Chi is really good for your health. We've been doing it for a very long time. We know what the benefits are. There's no truth to the claim that Tai Chi solves any health problem. That's kind of the contrast. And I think the same thing is true for meditation, where you just have to be realistic about things and definitely worth it, absolutely worth it. And we'll talk about that in a second. But not expect miracles to happen. I mean, I'm not a very religious man, so I don't expect miracles to begin with. And I think if you're waiting for miracles, I'm sad to say that it's going to be a very long wait indeed. You can meditate as hard as you like. All right, that was a mini rant for me.
But I think there's a good analogy there with what you've said, what you say about martial arts, which is, it's not going to make you the person who can't be defeated by, anyone. It'll give you an edge. And, there's quite a similar thing here. It'll give you an edge with depression, with the productivity, with whatever it is. But absolutely, it's not a golden ticket. And I often prescribe to people, some exercise will be really good as well. That's going to make you feel better. Some meditation, some journaling, talk to some people, switch up the diet. This is part of a package. But the meditation is something people often neglect. And they end up, I'm just going to believe everything I think. They get stuck in negative kind of thought patterns. So because it's like if someone's never exercised before, you focus in on that. Okay, we'll do the physical stuff. That's really going to make a difference, because we're kind of starting from zero. So I think that's when it can help. But you're right, it can even be dangerous. I had a client a few weeks ago who was had a very kind of serious health diagnosis, and was saying, people that they knew were saying, yeah, you just got to meditate through it, whatever. And the client was saying, well, I'm sitting there and I'm actually, I can't deal with this. I'm feeling proper traumatized. And they're saying, just carry on and sit there in silence with these thoughts. And I was like, stop now, right? When that happens, get up, walk about, do something else, take your mind off it. I mean, again, this can be dangerous if done the wrong way, or seen as this kind of solve it all thing. There's also cases, people going on these 10-day silent retreats. The Financial Times did a podcast about it, who had mental health issues and then weren't given the proper care. And, you're sitting there, there for 10 days and saying, you're not allowed to speak to anyone or watch any TV or read anything. Like most things, I mean, that ends up being detrimental instead of helping. I guess in the same way, if you take a couch potato and tell them go and spend the next 7 days in the gym full on, you might give them a cardiac arrest. So yeah, everything in moderation.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, and that kind of brings us to it. I mean, everything that we just said, taking that into account. So we remove all the woo-woo stuff. We remove all the wild and exaggerated claims. For somebody listening to it right now, what can they get out of meditation that you think, okay, this is reasonable. This is what you can expect, or what you could get out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's generally being calmer, combating stress, in that it's okay, I'm thinking this, I'm physically feeling this, worry, anxiety, whatever, learning to sit with that, not resist it, feel it in the body, breathe into it, let it dissipate a bit, and then switch your energy to, right, how can I actually make this better and do something about this instead, which, can be a real kind of paradigm change to dealing with those kind of feelings. But drilling more specifically, like if I'm talking to people who are, professionals in whatever sense, business, athletes, whatever, it's giving you more focus because you're getting less distracted by thoughts. So that's good for productivity. There's something called Wu Wei, which you'll come across in Taoism. It's called doing without doing, which sounds very woo-woo. But practically speaking, it's like just be present in doing what you're doing, instead of having a lot of energy focused on, I must get this done, I must reach that goal, whatever. If you instead channel that into just the actual doing of it, it'll kind of just get done by itself, right? Without a lot of striving. So that can help. People often say it makes them feel a bit more creative, because it just clearing the brain a little bit, letting the sediment settle. I find that too, like thoughts will kind of bubble up, different things. You find yourself being a bit more creative. General decision making, that you can not be taken off by whims the whole time, WHIM, not WM, that you have a bit more emotional regulation. I feel I want to jump in with that angry email, or hitting someone, or doing that, or taking that substance I was addicted to again, whatever it might be, that you can, start to have a little bit more space between stimulus and response, and avoid those knee-jerk reactions, which I think, at our age, we realize that that's quite a good thing just generally in life. However you can get to that way of thinking, be that meditation or something else, knowing to check yourself, challenge yourself, not get carried away with every kind of whim, which then brings us to habits. Breaking bad habits, building good habits. Deal with a lot of people who come with me come to me with those kind of issues, right? How can I build up a good habit, break a bad habit? And that's a combination of stuff. It's not just meditating. It's also very practical things of structuring your environment, of making a public kind of declaration of what you're doing, of rewarding yourself, momentum, step by step, various things. But meditation as a part of that can be useful. And one of my favorite things about it is, but my claim is, whatever time I think you spend on meditation, you get that time back, in terms of you just that bit calmer and more focused afterwards. So, do 5 minutes meditation, you kind of do the other things in the day a bit more efficient, a bit more effectively. And I think you end up kind of getting that time back. So yeah, not really any negative side effects, I would say, and quite a lot to like, as part of a package. Once again, it's not a golden ticket, but yeah.
Well, you mentioned Wu Wei, and the way it was first explained to me many years ago, and I always liked that analogy. Wu Wei would be seen as a concept of, for instance, not going against nature is a bad translation, but it's kind of the concept of don't force things is another aspect of it. And the analogy that I was given was like, look, you're in a boat in a river and you fall overboard. What do? Not going against nature is not doing nothing and drowning. There's no reason why you should die when that happens. Going against nature would be trying to go straight towards the shore, fighting the current as it drags you along. You're not going to win that one, especially if the water's pretty cold and and the river's pretty wide, and we know that such rivers do exist in China. So that's not going to be, Wu Wei either. So what would it be? Well, one of the things that it could be is that fine, don't fight, the current, but try to use it as you go downstream to get closer and closer to the shore, and then just get out of the water. So you're not fighting anything. You're using actually the energy of the current that is dragging you along anyway, and slightly bend it towards a situation where it's beneficial to you. And it's this mindset of like you don't immediately see like, oh, there's a problem, I need to do a drastic solution right now, or the worst is going to happen, as opposed to like, how can I turn this into my advantage and use whatever I have around me by having this calm and clear mind, like, okay, this is what I want, this is a situation, and I can expend a massive amount of energy with a very uncertain outcome, or if I can use the elements that are present here that I can use to my benefit and get the same result, maybe a little bit slower, maybe a little bit faster. It's hard to say sometimes, but it doesn't cost me that immense amount of energy and difficulty that you have to overcome. And I found that when you talk to people who are very balanced, for whatever reason, maybe it's meditation, maybe it's life experience, is that they have more and more that kind of mindset. And if meditation can help you get there, so like you said, like take a step back, just be able to focus on like, okay, I'm feeling stressed out, or there's a conflict brewing, or there's a road rage. I just posted on my Instagram a video of a guy getting out of his car and going, the car in front of him. We don't know what happened beforehand. Huge guy gets out of that car in front, and they're slapping each other, and the guy who's basically got out first is like, ah, this is bad for me, and he takes off. It's like, well, maybe some perspective would have been nice. And on one of the forms, and I've told this before, but for the audience who are only now tuning in, is one of the forms that the late Bob Orlando would teach is you start with a salutation, as you often do in forms, and you had to make kind of triangle figure with your hands and fingers. And the idea was that symbolizes the mountain, and the mountain gives you perspective. If you stand at the bottom of it, it's huge and gigantic. If you're at the top, you see just how much more there is out there. Everybody down at the foot of the mountain looks tiny, and you look behind you and there's a new mountain range that's even higher. So you get a different perspective. And he told me the example of, you see two guys fighting in the street, don't just wade in. You have no idea what's going on, who is fighting whom, for what reason, who is the quote unquote good guy, bad guy. You might actually make things worse. So it's taking a beat to get perspective, and that requires a certain control over your emotions, like you mentioned. Don't immediately get angry, or if you are prone to just automatically blurting things out, just learn to take this step back, and that requires a certain conditioning skill, if you want, mental skill, that I think meditation can very much help with.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I think you find in most meditation traditions is this idea of labeling as a first thing, which is when those thoughts flood in, you go, okay, that's anger or that's worry. Putting that mental label on it just helps separate you from your thoughts. So it's opening up again that little space towards thinking, okay, my brain just kind of spits out thoughts. That's what it does the whole day. But I don't actually have to believe all of them. A number of them are kind of wildly inaccurate. And yeah, that can certainly bring, a little bit of peace. And again, it's not about switching off all thinking, but just being a bit more discretionary in, what stuff you're going to run with. Yeah.
Well, that kind of brings us to the biology of it all, because, I mean, the triune brain theory is kind of debunked. It's not that much used anymore. So the idea is that we have kind of three levels of our brain: very deep, primitive thoughts, parts of our brain that are like fight and flight reflexes that happen without conscious thought. And then we would have a more emotional brain that is constantly stirring up emotions in various ways. And then on top of that, we would have the rational thinking. I still like to use this analogy, this concept sometimes, because it helps people understand what you explain afterwards. But nowadays, there's a lot more information about system 1 and system 2 thinking and so on. So the whole point is that you might think you're very rational while you're being wildly emotional. We might think that, we make perfect sense, where everybody else around us is looking at like, I have no idea what this guy's talking about. He's just ranting. And the best example that I tend to give in that case is is that if you want to basically have a really good fight in your relationship, tell your significant other when you're in the middle of a fight to just calm down. Calm down a little
Right.
bit.
Yeah.
What is the reaction you're going to get? 9 out of 10, they're going to get even more angry and maybe even start shouting if they haven't already. So, but afterwards, like maybe a week or a month afterwards, when you talk and it turns out that the person said like, I was kind of out of control, I was really upset and you didn't deserve that, was a misunderstanding. Then you could get to the conclusion of, I should have calmed down. That you're right.
Right.
So the rational part of our brain can really understand this, and you're smack in the middle of an emotional episode. There's no way that rational part can basically overrule the emotions if you're that angry. And I think meditation can be really helpful in gathering some more control over how your brain functions. Like the idea that anything that we say is purely rational is complete nonsense. And a lot of the research right now suggests that it's actually the opposite, that we have the emotional part first, and then our rational brain finds ways to explain it in like, oh yeah, no, this makes perfect sense.
Retrofit. Yeah.
Yeah. And meditation can be an extremely powerful tool in not deluding yourself. And if there's one thing the humans have, that is the incredible capacity to delude ourselves, to lie to ourselves. And my experience is that meditation is extremely powerful if when done right and consistently. And again, talked about this takes work. Is that you learn to have what I call the disciplined mind, which is that you're not a slave to your brain. Your brain is going to have to listen to you, quote unquote. I'm overstating it a little bit, but that you don't just get hijacked by your emotions and your thought processes
Right.
and so on. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, most people are not angry for a year. I mean, we come down from the emotions and then we're like, oh, actually, that was pretty dumb what I said or did. The meditation is speeding up that, because it's like you still maybe feel the adrenal dump or the anger dump or whatever, but you're training to be able to let that go, not believe the whole thing, feel where it comes in the body, breathe into that, lengthen the out breaths, get the parasympathetic nervous system going again, calm yourself down. So yeah, it's all quite, practical stuff. But again, like with the martial arts, it's not that you manage that every time. It's something that you can train in. I think your whole life. It's not okay. 6 months and then nothing will ever phase me again. No, but it gives you the edge, and in this case, it takes the edge off as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and that brings us to the next part that we should talk about is the benefits of meditation with martial arts and self-defense training, or the existing relationship. Again, like I said in the beginning, the style of Tai Chi that we do has a component meditation in it. It's not gigantic as you sometimes see in other more the woo-woo styles of Tai Chi, but it's definitely a part of it, and our late teacher has talked about it and written about it as well. So I think it's definitely there. So from your perspective, what would be the benefits for people who are practicing?
So I thought you might ask this. So I have divided it up as you would, into training and then competition / self-defense, and then the kind of aftermath stuff. So I think in training, when we're talking about emotional control, building good habits, yeah, great, helps you turn up, helps you keep up a practice, builds actually just the act of having a regular meditation practice also trains you to, in the art of practicing, keeping up things, which of course is very important for martial arts. Certain styles of meditation involve sensing the body, and actually doing kind of body scans where you would go through, feel the head, the ears, the nose, over several minutes, working down the body. And so you get this very good sense of your own body, where it is in space, staying present with it. Of course, that's very handy. when we do our Tai Chi form. We're supposed to be very present and focused in what we're doing, not off doing something else. And in doing so, of course, you do it better because you're concentrated on that, not on, what you're going to watch on TV or cook for dinner later. Then in a situation, be that combat sports or a self-defense situation, obviously that calmness, that ability, not like in a movie that you're, there just super zen, whatever happens, I can handle it, but taking that edge off a bit so you're not completely, paralyzed or kind of the other end of the scale, going, flailing wildly, trying to do something. So having that calmness. But even before it's actually kicked off, if it's a self-defense situation, of diffusing that, of having the presence of mind, not to be, okay, you've insulted my mother or my face or whatever it is, but, I'm going to keep things decent and try and settle things down. So not being provoked. During a situation, be that self-defense or combat sports, it's again that ability to focus. And you said once, it's you think, some people think, okay, I've got to be super angry when I'm fighting, either in self-defense or in combat sports. And you said, no, you want to be focused with yi, but being super angry can actually be being super out of control, and that's a very bad thing. And you're not kind of checking your own defense, these kind of things, or knowing when to stop. Very important. And then in terms of improving awareness, reaction time, dealing with pain, all these kind of things, come within that broad scope of managing emotions, being focused, being present. So I think just little edges that it can give you. Now, is it a substitute for good skill and practice and training? Absolutely not. No, but we want every little edge we can get, right? As you always say, any little thing you can do, that could make the difference. And then I think, as you always say as well, dealing with the aftermath. It doesn't just end there with the end of the competition or the end of the self-defense situation. There's all the emotional stuff that comes after that, the physical stuff, the shaking, the processing in the hours and days and weeks afterwards. So you've also got a bit of an ally there as well to help deal with that. Again, not resisting things, allowing them to come, but not believing them at the same time, not letting them take you off, coming back into the body, coming back into the breath, into the present moment. So that can help with the recovery as well. So, yeah, I think right across from training, diffusing, de-escalating, being in the situation, and the aftermath, it's got something to offer for each stage, I would say.
Yeah, I kind of said it before, but I call this the disciplined mind, meaning that as human beings, I think we all still have our inner child, which just wants to do whatever it wants. Just like, I want this, I'll just do it. Or like a 3-year-old, or give that to me because I want it. I think this is always going to be a part of us as humans. So there's a lot of benefit into being able to control yourself. And my thought is that, and there's some discussion, last time I read about it on the scientific front, but that there is a benefit to training your mind to be disciplined and organized and under your control for a certain part. Obviously, it's never 100%, as we just explained about how the brain works, but trying to work on gaining more control over yourself as opposed to simply being hijacked by emotions or situations and so on. And I think that is the huge difference when you look at combat sport for certain athletes, because they are mentally incredibly strong. John Danaher, the coach of Gordon Ryan, who is at this point, I think, undisputed the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu athlete in the world, has talked about is like, look, he's certain physical traits, he's not that impressive, but his mindset and his self-confidence is incredible, off the charts, combined with his ability to recall information, which makes him so much better than everybody else. And that is pure what's going on between your ears. That's just the mind, controlling the mind.
Right.
And I'm sure there's a certain, genetic component that he's born with a brain that can process that way. There's probably a high chance that he's an outlier in certain degrees to a certain degree on that front. But still, it's this thing that you're focused and you can maintain focus to a certain degree and not do what you just want to do, but what needs to be done. This is something I teach in my MMA class. For instance, I'll show 3 techniques, or I'll show one of the drills we did is 3, 4, 5, whatever defense against a jab or a cross. Very simple. And one is a parry, one is a slip, one is this, one is that, and so on. And then I tell my students, look, you have to do them in this order. And always at first students do them in a different order. And I said, no, this first, then that, then that. And it's not that you have to do it in that order. I could have changed the order. That's not the issue. It's the fact that you're unable to control yourself to do something that you plan to do beforehand, which makes it extremely difficult to have the skill to do a technique that you know you need to be able to do that technique because of the tactical and strategic situation that you find yourself in that competition, that you know he's taller than you, so you need to get close to hit him or to do a takedown or whatever. The only way you can do that if you discipline yourself and you have the ability to stand at the distance that you want, do the specific feint or setup and so on, react to certain things he does in a very specific way, in a specific order. And it's this discipline that when applied throughout your life, I think that it reinforces it in different levels as well. So if you focus on meditation, this is about disciplining your mind. And there's very basic meditation. It's just like, imagine that you close your eyes, imagine that you're just looking at a street and any thought you get is like a car driving by. You don't look at it, you just let it drive by. Let the thought go away, don't focus on it, which is at first very difficult for people. It's like, yeah, that's discipline. You by the time you can do that, just empty your mind, it's going to take a lot of effort. Same thing in other ways. And for self-defense, you touched upon it already, just the ability in the aftermath to calm yourself down, to focus on what needs to be done and so on, as opposed to flip out and just like, oh my God, I just got assaulted, or that guy pulled a knife on me and I almost died. Yeah, okay, first make sure that you can get away. Are you injured or not? Do you need to get to a hospital? Do you need to call somebody and so on, that you can maintain that discipline as opposed to let yourself get completely taken over by the intensity of the situation. So these are the things that I often teach people and talk about when you want to practice something to get better. It's like any training that you do, it's always going to involve your brain and your mind, whatever it is. Even if it's just a reflex action that is, well, reflexes tend to come from the spinal cord more, but then the fight's on, so then it's your brain engaged again. So the more you discipline yourself, the more you teach control over your mind, the better your performance can potentially be. Like we said in the beginning, there's no silver bullet, there's no magic solution that doesn't exist, but it can give you a definite edge though.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Let me see. I mean, we talked a little bit in general. Let's talk a little bit about just practical. Just look at, because a lot of people are like, maybe now, like, I'm all in, Wim, Andy, let's go. What do I do? Well, what kind of meditations are out there? Just if we can give a little bit of guidance there.
Yeah, I mean, like physical exercise, many different types. At its base, trying to keep the mind here and now and not believe everything we think, right? Those are our goals. Sounds simple. Let's just do that. Try and do that. Okay, that's tricky, as you say. Okay, it's cars on the road. Before I know it, I'm trying to chase that car. I've tried to stop that car. I can't just let the cars go by. So many systems use an anchor. So it's something I can just come back to, and that keeps me in the present moment. So one would be the breath. So it's like, give your mind this to focus on instead. Focus on the breathing, feel the breath coming in and out the nose or mouth. And when we get dragged off with a thought, which we will, we don't beat ourselves up about it, don't resist it, that gives it more energy. Just like, okay, I was thinking, but I realized I was thinking. So you've actually done a good thing here, right? Not a bad thing. Like this is great. You've exercised the muscle that realized you were getting dragged off and remember to come back. So this is fantastic. reward yourself with a big breath, and come back to the breath. And you keep doing that again and again and again. Every time you go off, you come back to the breath. Other anchors you can use, the body, so just focusing, either scanning slowly through the body, and once again, times you'll find you go off thinking, come back, carry on scanning through the body. You can do it with movement, and I often find for people who've had trouble, they've been told they've got to sit on a mat cross-legged, and that's not happening for them. Just doing some simple movements, maybe also using the breath at the same time. So I mean, you're getting into kind of qigong type stuff almost here, of moving the body, synchronizing the breath. And that just gives the mind again something to really focus on and keep you here and now. There's more slightly esoteric stuff you can do with visualizations, with listening to sounds. Even in our style of Tai Chi, we have a mantra. So, mantras is a similar thing. A mantra is a repetitive phrase you kind of say again and again. I mean, you could almost argue it could be anything. The important thing is just you say it again and again, and it kind of hypnotizes you into being present. Normally, they do have a kind of grander meaning, but at its base, it's something, once again, to just keep you here and now. Thoughts come. Don't punish yourself. It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. That's what happens. Don't resist. Come back to the anchor. Walking meditation you can do. You can do, I call kind of everyday meditation. So I'll say to people, it's great to have a dedicated, practice. Start with a few minutes a day, but also find something you do every day. So for me, for example, I walk to the lift. I take the lift or the elevator down. So in that time, I'm just going to be present. So I kind of make a conscious thing. Okay, now I'm just walking to the lift. I'm looking around me, seeing the lift going down, and I'm not going to be off on the phone or thinking about something else. So you can kind of, put those moments in your day when you're taking a shower, when you're driving, when you're brushing your teeth, and have those little kind of mini meditations. And yeah, it can be, as simple as that, really. It doesn't have to be more complicated.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of visualization. I did a lot of that when I was younger, especially when I competed, and I find it extremely useful. It helps if you kind of have a visual brain like I do. I see things in my mind. I don't hear them. I don't smell them. That's just the way that my mind works. And I think that for a lot of people, this is really, really helpful. But it can also be movement. I mean, I've got a good friend, and he's a novelist, and he goes on walks, and and he starts thinking and working, and it tends to be his thing to get through certain issues when he's writing and he's kind of stuck somewhere or needs to find a solution for something. And all that can help. Like you said, it can be our form. We do the hand form in Tai Chi. The short form takes about 3 to 5 minutes, but the long form can easily take 15 to 20 minutes. And you're not supposed to doze off. You're not supposed to think about, the shopping you still have to do. You need to maintain your focus for 15 to 20 minutes. And getting to that point is quite difficult, but that's the whole thing is, I think that's where a lot of people often get frustrated or they give up too soon in that they think there's a certain stage that you need to achieve. And like you said in the beginning, I've reached enlightenment and now I am this Zen person. No, it's the fact that you keep on training and working at it. That gives you certain benefits and certain skills that you can develop, as opposed to I do this until a certain point and now I have it and it's mine. You can lose it. You can mess up your brain again. You can mess up your mind again due to varying. You might go through a traumatic event. You might have extreme amounts of stress suddenly at work. There might be a family situation that develops and then just messes up your brain a little bit. It's not a given. So focusing on something that works for you, whatever it is, like you said, if it's just this kind of more sensory in the sense that I want to actually feel the breath going into my body and going out again, or proprioception, just feeling of you can be standing, you can lying down, just being clear that this is what it feels like to stand, this is what my left arm feels, this is what my right arm feels. basically just like a check. Is everything still working? Whatever works for you is fine. And I found that people often tend to give up too soon because they go to a specific school or instructor, or read a specific book. They try it and it's not for them. And then like, oh yeah, meditation sucks. It doesn't work. No, maybe you didn't do it long enough, or you had expectations that weren't realistic, or you just tried a method that wasn't really suited for you. So that kind of brings
Yeah.
me to my questions. I mean, so you teach meditation? Do you teach classes? How do you teach?
Yeah, so I call it meditation for the rest of us because I just got, a bit frustrated with how it was generally marketed, and I thought it shut a lot of people out from something that anyone can do that's very practical. There's many ways to do it. A bit like martial arts, though, everyone says their way is the best, right? Like, and everything else is rubbish, kind of thing. And so you try that. Maybe you try taekwondo, think, oh, I didn't like that, and think all martial arts are not for me. So no, I mean, I teach also, different strokes for different folks. Try some different techniques, see what works for them. My key thing is, don't do an hour tomorrow. Do a minute tomorrow, 2 minutes. The whole thing is momentum, right? Like with exercise, really. So it's not about big hit. It's about if you build that system, that momentum, get in the habit, it will come automatically. There'll be days when it sucks, when your mind's all over the place, but it is inevitable. It will come. And the other thing, when people say, "Oh, how am I doing? I'm worried I'm not good at this," like, relax, because meditation is the one thing we don't measure ourselves. That's the whole point. We're letting go of trying to get somewhere. So the minute you kind of go, am I doing meditation well? No, that's not a thing, right? It's just stopping caring about if you're doing meditation well is doing meditation well. That's it. So you actually, this is the one point in life and all the stuff you try to achieve, you can let go. I mean, there's a story of a guy who went to a Zen master and said, "How long will it take me to become a Zen master like you?" And he said, "Oh, 5 years. What if I really, really work at it?" And he was like, well, maybe 10 years in your case then, So it's like the whole thing is kind of, let go of the trying to achieve thing. So, I start people off on something. We try some things. They'll go off. They do their own practice. They'll check in once, twice a week. We'll have a session. You can learn this stuff from apps now. There's some great apps out there. Headspace, Calm, Waking Up, a bit more of a cerebral kind of one with talks and stuff. But I find a lot of people come to me, they'll be trying that stuff, but then they want to kind of check in with another human and say, well, this is what I experience when I do it, or is there something else I can try, talk through what they're doing, have a session together so they know they're guaranteed a time, when they're with me that they're paying for, that it's like, okay, now I'm really going to make sure I get my practice in, and talk through what comes up. And it actually ended up, I found, becoming a little bit therapy sometimes, because people will then start talking about worries that come up, fears, trauma, whatever. And when you train to be a teacher, at least the training I did, we kind of covered all of that kind of stuff. So then I also started teaching something called Change Your Mind, which was, if you've got a particular issue or something you want to change or that you're dealing with, that we talk it through. And it's a kind of mix of some psychology, some therapy, breath work, physical exercise, meditation, and all of that kind of, packaged together, and in a kind of tailored way, depending on the situation and the person, to help them kind of, make the changes that they want going forward. But whatever I'm doing, my kind of watchwords are, it's practical, it's rooted in ancient wisdom, sure, but it's refined with modern psychology, neuroscience. It's what works, stuff I've tried, stuff I've looked at the science as well. Okay, this seems to be good. It's not one size fits all. It's depending on the person. And yeah, I try to make it as clear, straightforward as possible, and a fun thing as well. This shouldn't be a chore. This should be it's like spa day for your mind. It should be, right? And once you start doing it for a bit, it will become like, okay, this is actually a nice relaxing thing to do. This is not like I've got to get my 20 minutes of meditation done or I'm a bad person. Like, no, this is the time to kind of to let go. And if people have come from other traditions where they've been forced to sit in pain for hours, which can work for some, but for others it doesn't. I think it's it's a welcome relief to hear there's kind of some other friendlier, gentler ways to learn to meditate. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you touched upon something very important is that, I mean, there's been a lot of research done on meditation, how it works, the slower brain waves that it tends to call up, the benefits of meditation on varieties of health issues and just in general, even for healthy people. So it's what you mentioned that it's yes, it's ancient wisdom, but there is a lot of science actually backing this up. So and I think that would be a caveat that I would tell people who are interested is like, you want to talk to somebody who understands that it's more than just an ancient tradition. There's ancient traditions out there that we really don't want to bring back. Like, over here
Yes.
in Europe, the bloodletting medicine of the medieval times, that's a
Right. Yes.
tradition that
Yeah.
science kind of says like
Yeah.
it's not really a good thing, but there's really good stuff out there as well that's been around
Yeah.
for pretty much as long as there's been human beings. So a blend of the old and the new maybe is what would be a good description.
Yeah, we're so funny with this stuff, aren't we? Like with technology, we're very much like, no, the new stuff better.
Yeah,
We like the new stuff, but always building it. But then with like martial arts and meditation, are two fields we tend to go, oh no, it has to be like very old
yeah.
and dusty, otherwise it's got no value. It's so, yeah, no, we can still kind of evolve that as well. It's yeah,
Well,
yeah. I mean, yeah,
Bobo Orlando said that it's there's nothing wrong with a tradition providing that it teaches a valuable lesson still today. And that
mm,
means that it's a living tradition as opposed to a dead one. I always that always stuck with me is that when you practice traditional martial arts or at this stage if you do Fairbairn and Sykes and World War II combatives,
mm,
that's like 80 years old stuff, and you're saying that this is the best thing ever. Yes, but it's still
mm.
80 years old stuff. Second World War is a long, long time ago. So if that's the kind of stuff you learned back then, do you think there's been zero progress since then? Maybe that's a difficult thing for you to accept, but that doesn't mean it's not good. What it means is that, like you said, this very bizarre obsession almost with lineage, and yes, my style goes back 500 years. I'm like, okay, well, there was a lot of stuff 500 years ago that we really think is complete nonsense, that we know is untrue. So maybe that is not the boast that you think it is. However, if something is valuable and it worked back then and it still works today, and it's rooted in very concrete things and practical solutions to specific problems, yeah, we're still human beings with two arms, two legs, and a head on top of it. So yes, and the brain
Right.
pretty much
Yeah.
is still
Yeah.
the brain. The
Yeah.
evolution of mankind goes over millions of years as opposed to a few centuries. So a lot of stuff
Yeah.
that worked back then, yes, is definitely going to most likely work back now. So this blending of ancient practices with modern science is I think very much worth exploring. And if it isn't for you, then it
Mm.
isn't for you. That's fine. Like you said, maybe you need to find a different teacher. Maybe it's a different method that you need. And maybe you're that like in the Matrix, Neo, you're the one who doesn't need it at all. You're perfectly balanced. You're enlightened
Yeah, and I
already.
mean, people, there's a state called flow state, right? Which
Yeah.
is when you're doing something that's just challenging enough, it's not too challenging, and you're completely in the moment when you're doing it. I mean, what is that? But meditation. When I speak to divers, they're like, I love it. I love the feeling. If it's scuba divers, you're breathing regularly, you're moving slowly, you can't talk, you're very much in the moment. And it's like, you see this kind of commonality in things that people love doing. I find quite often that really keep them in the present moment and in a kind of flow state. And it's like, yeah, that's all we're going for. If you've got something that gives you that,
Yeah.
you're golden. Like fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we have to be mindful of the time because you have to go in a little bit, and we're going to switch on over to the second part of the conversation over on my
Okay.
Patreon because my patrons have some fun questions for you. Before we go, Annie, where can people find you online and the meditation that you teach?
The simplest way to contact me is on Instagram. I think Particular Bear is DMing me there. I most of my online stuff is actually about the adventurous stuff. That does get into meditation stuff sometimes. Yeah, the meditation stuff is mainly things that you know, I kind of teach in private sessions. But yeah, people can reach out there, and if they're interested in having a session or finding out more, then I will happily reply.
All right, and I'll add a link to your Instagram in the show notes. So for the audience, show notes is always at wimsblog.com, and then the number of the episode we're at right now. So
And when they go on it and they see it's a guy talking about Yetis, that is still
yeah,
me.
then it's also
That's
you.
not the meditation guy, surely. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
That's why I introduced you as international man of mystery who has gone on adventures. Because when they see the Yeti stuff or the surviving in developing country stuff and so on, which has been a part of your life as well. So anything going on that front that you can talk about? Any new stuff coming out?
Yeah, well, I'm off to Antarctica in a few days' time, which is going to be, yeah, I think the biggest kind of adventure for a while. And I think, yeah, that's, somewhere quite interesting. That one part of the world where you don't have a indigenous population, where you will kind of die quite soon if you're kind of unsupported there. Pretty extreme, but starkly beautiful, as I understand as well. And yeah, I mean, humans have a very interesting history in that continent, both the kind of good side of humanity, of working together and scientific research and this kind of stuff, and surviving against the elements and endurance, and the bad side of let's exploit this and fight each other for who controls it. So I think it's a nice, interesting microcosm, which you can also link to meditation of kind of human egos and the kind of insatiable desire for more, more status, more land, or whatever. So it's interesting. I always say if you brought people back or brought people forward from the past, and you brought them here, and they were from a few hundred years ago, they'd be amazed at the technology and the stuff that we have. But then when you showed them like the politics and the way people are treating each other and the way human minds are working, the jealousy, the anger, the fear, the prejudice, the putting people in separate groups and then railing against them, they'd be, oh yeah, no, this is all. Oh, so you guys haven't moved on that much.
Oh,
You've got
really?
iPhones,
Since the fall of the Roman Empire, you learn nothing.
This looks quite familiar. So that's what you were saying, like some of the martial arts stuff, that's probably why that's still relevant, because we have still got 2 arms and legs. So some of the, that joint lock still works. We have still got the basic same brain. So yeah, negativity bias, hedonic adaptation, lust, fear, greed. I read this great book, A History of the World Through Families, which this guy wrote during COVID. All of human history in a book, it's about 1,000 pages long. Very interesting, but you just, you're like, oh my goodness, what is wrong with us as a race? I mean, the amount of just, and no one escapes. I mean, every country, every race, whatever, fighting each other, enslaving each other, never satisfied, and it's you're kind of, by the end of it, your head's in your hands, and you read his conclusion and you think, well, surely he's going to draw something positive out of this, of that we have actually advanced. And his conclusion is that the lesson of history is that we don't learn from history. It's like, great.
It's true.
But the one standout thing for that were 2 things, actually. One was kind of the Buddha, and not from a religious sense at all, but from the Buddha's teaching 2,000 years ago, the historical Buddha, of kind of saying, you're unhappy because you keep wanting things and you never stop. And we know we're kind of programmed like that evolutionarily in order to get resources, get status so we can reproduce and pass on our genes. And then a couple of warlords, such as Ashoka in the 2nd century BC, who turned around after a couple of decades of kind of raping and pillaging and went, actually, this isn't making me particularly happy, and kind of, got into these other ideas, and in their dotage were kind of like, okay, no, I'm actually more at peace now. This was, however many people I killed and land I conquered and concubines I got, I was never quite satisfied. You're like, okay, so there are a couple of lessons in there to ease the depression. But it's that kind of stuff that makes you think, there is something to this idea that we, happiness is this internal thing, not this external one. You'll know the Chinese proverb about the guy whose son breaks his leg falling off the horse, right? And then he thinks it's a terrible thing. Next day, the army recruiters come, can't take the son because he's got a broken leg. Turns out, the story kind of goes on like that, with the lesson that yeah, you never quite know anyway, what external things are gonna make you happy or not. But I think going to Antarctica will. I'm probably very wrong.
For
Let's
sure, it's
see.
going to be an experience. I mean,
Yes.
that is unlike any other. You
Yeah.
know, it's bound to be that, pretty sure that the preparation that goes with it is also not nothing. It's a very unforgiving environment, and like you said, if you don't work together, you don't make it. That's it. And I've written about this many times on my blog, talked about this many times on the podcast. Is that just that we live in a universe that is hostile to human life. As far as we know, there's only one planet where it's possible, that we know for sure. And even on this planet, nature is constantly trying to end our life. Just constantly. If you live outside, you're open to the elements, and you've got nothing to cover you, no roof over your head. You're gonna die from exposure very, very quickly. So modern life and technology only exist because we made these ungodly advances in science and medicine and so on that allows us to live on this planet for the most part in a pretty high standard of life. And then you go to Antarctica where where it's like, no. The answer is no, you're nothing, and you will disappear. Nobody will ever find you again if you drop down this thing here. We don't know how deep it is, or you fall into this water. You're not getting out. Nobody can come rescue you. So if you go off to wander when we told you to stay here, then you just, that's it. You're done. That's it. There's
It doesn't matter what's on your business card or how much money you got in the bank. Like the environment don't care about that. It's like everyone is this big, and if you're not kind of working together, then so that's kind of quite nice. It's quite humbling, and it gets rid of any status anxiety because maybe someone's a bit above you, but you're all as nothing compared to that ice shelf or that.
And that was kind of my point. Is that a lot of people have lost track of that. Just the reality of living on this planet, the reality of nature, how beautiful it is, obviously, but also how lethal. And it doesn't. The planet doesn't care about you as an individual. It does not care if the storm hits, if the I don't know, if the ice breaks and you're drifting off into the sea and there's nobody to get you. That's it. You're done. And nature will not cry over you. It just who was it again? I forget what it was. It's a long time ago, but. Somebody cries out at the universe and just in outrage is like, I exist, is what he cries out. And the universe replies, and that doesn't mean I have to care for you. It's something like, I'm messing up the quote, but that's kind of the idea here. So, I don't know, maybe we can talk to that again when you get back, what it was like.
It reminds me of what you often say about violence, that people see it, but they never experience it these days. They see it on TV, and so they don't take it seriously enough, right? They don't think twice about whatever, jumping out of their car in, road rage incident. Bit the same thing with the nature, that they're so used to being protected that they go out to the mountains, to the Himalayas or to Antarctica not prepared, and like, oh, hang on. Yeah, it's... it's actually a lot harsher a world out there than I realized.
When I visited you in Bali, we suddenly got stuck in a monsoon rain, and it's like, and I literally and I just said it recently. If I would have stood in the rain, looked up, opened my mouth, I would have drowned, because that's the kind of rain it is, and it takes like 5-10 minutes, and then it stops. But the whole freaking world stops. There's nothing you can do. Right. Find shelter, wait for it to go away. Nothing good can come from going into the monsoon like that. No, nothing. Yeah. There's no benefits. There's only bad things that will happen, and there's nothing you can do. Just find shelter, wait, and then resume your life. Yeah. That's the only thing you can do. And that rain doesn't care about me or you. It's just gonna fall, and it's just gonna happen. Okay, accept it. Like you said, it doesn't matter how much money in the bank you have. You will still drown if you try, looking at the sky with your mouth open. Anyway, we have to move on because
yes. What crazy questions have your patrons got?
Yes. Okay. So, folks, the link will be in the show notes. Join us on Patreon, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.